I'll never forget the way they laughed. It was one of those weekend family meetings. BBQ in the backyard, cheap beer, too many, folding chairs, the works. I set my glass down and smiled, trying to lighten the mood. "I can't wait for our vacation," I said. And then my dad, with his stupid sunglasses and greasy apron, laughed like I'd just told the best joke. "Oh no, Liam, that's for family. You're not invited." Everyone burst out laughing. My brother Chris clapped like it was a sitcom punchline. My sister Abby smirked into her lemonade. Even my mom, who always tried to play neutral, giggled like it was harmless fun. I didn't say a word. I just nodded, stood up, and walked out. They didn't stop me, didn't call after me. 5 days later, my mom tried to take $5,000 out of an old joint account I forgot to close. She didn't ask, just went for it. I'd left a withdrawal limit on that card ages ago, $400 a day. It blocked the transaction, so I blocked the card and renamed the account Pay Without Me. That's when the texts started. But let me back up. A month earlier, I'd taken a short trip to Estes Park with my girlfriend Kayla. Just a weekend away. She's a dental hygienist. I teach 5th grade. We split costs, stayed in a modest cabin, drank cheap wine, and hiked until our legs gave out. It was peaceful. It was ours. I didn't post anything, but someone did. My cousin's Instagram story caught us in the background. That was enough. Within 48 hours, Abby called me selfish. Chris said I was slipping, and my mom, ever the master of passive guilt, said, "We've always been there for you, Liam. And the one time we went on a vacation together, you vanished." Like I owed them a slice of every peaceful moment in my life. I figured it would blow over. They always cooled off eventually, so when my mom texted about a just family dinner, I assumed it was an olive branch. It wasn't. I showed up with a bottle of wine and a heart half full of hope. Their backyard was packed. Chris was manning the grill like a hero. Abby was glued to her phone. My mom was arranging napkins like it was a Martha Stewart shoot. No one greeted me. No one looked surprised. We sat. I tried to make conversation with Chris's wife, who clearly didn't want to be caught in the crossfire. At some point, my mom asked how Kayla was. I said, "She's good." That was it. No follow-up, just awkward silence. To ease the tension, I said something dumb. "I can't wait for summer break. I really need a proper vacation." That's when my dad made his announcement. "That's for family, without you." And they laughed, like I was the punchline, like I was a stranger who had wandered into the wrong reunion. I left the wine behind and walked out. It could have ended there, but 5 days later, I got a fraud alert. My mom had tried to empty an old joint account, the one I set up when I was helping with groceries during COVID. I'd forgotten it existed. She hadn't. I stared at the notification for a full minute before I acted. Then I renamed the account Pay Without Me, blocked the card, changed the PIN, sat back. 1 hour later, my phone buzzed like a beehive. "Mom." That was a misunderstanding. "Dad, you're blowing this out of proportion." "Chris, stop acting like a victim." "Abby." She sent laughing emojis and a screenshot of the rejection message. I replied to the whole group with one word, "Okay," and then I disappeared. No more texts, no more explanations. I just cut the cord. At least I thought I did. 3 days later, I came home to find the front door of my apartment slightly ajar. Inside, my entire family. My parents, my sister, Chris, sitting on my couch, flipping through my photo albums like they lived there. I froze. Kayla, who was just behind me, with a bag of takeout, dropped it. "What are you doing here?" I asked. My mom smiled like we were old friends at a surprise reunion. "We needed to talk. You didn't answer, so we came over. You tried to steal from me. It was for the holidays," she said, like that made it okay. "You're still part of this family, Liam. Like it or not." I walked in. Kayla stayed by the door. I felt her unease like static in the air. Neither of them looked at her. Then my dad said it. "You've been different since you started dating her, like we're a burden." Abby snorted. "He's always been flaky. Colorado just proved it." They didn't come to apologize. They came to pull me back in. They came to guilt me into giving again. Kayla finally spoke up. "You broke into his apartment. That's not okay." My mom turned to her and said coldly, "This is family business." That was when I snapped. "You need to go, now." They didn't move at first. My dad tried sarcasm. Abby made a dig about how Kayla must be loving the drama. My mom gave me that look, disappointed and smug, but I didn't care. I opened the door and waited. They left. My mom was the last. Just before she stepped out, she turned to me and said, You're going to regret this." I locked the door behind them and didn't move for a long time. Kayla sat on the couch, stunned. "This isn't normal, Liam." I nodded. "I know, but I didn't sleep that night because something about my mom's confidence walking in like she owned the place told me this wasn't over. So I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Aunt Cora, the family's ghost, the one no one talked about. She picked up on the second ring and said I was wondering when you'd call. That's when the story truly began. Aunt Cora didn't ask what happened. She already knew. I saw the messages, she said. Your mom's been spiraling ever since you got that job offer out of state last year. She just didn't say it out loud. I hadn't even accepted that offer. I'd turned it down partly because of Kayla, mostly because I thought staying close to family was the responsible thing to do. Apparently, responsibility doesn't count when it doesn't serve them. "Come over," she said. "Tonight." I did. I hadn't been to Cora's place in years. It was small, a little worn around the edges, but warm. You could tell no one walked on eggshells in her house. There were plants in every corner, photos on the shelves, not all of them happy. Some looked like memories she refused to forget. She handed me a folder without a word. Inside were copies, emails, text, screenshots, bank statements. Years old, from when she used to help my parents with money. She pointed to a line item, $10,000, for what was supposedly a roof repair. Then she showed me cruise photos from the same month. They told everyone Cora had memory problems, said she was lying, gaslighting disguised as concern. I sat back, trying to make it all fit. This had started long before I ever pulled away. It wasn't about Kayla. It wasn't about the vacation. This was their pattern, and I was just next in line. Your mom's good at guilt, Cora said. She spins everything until you question what you saw. She did it to me. Your dad backed her every time. I asked why she never said anything. Because no one believed me, she said. But you're the first one who stopped apologizing. I told her everything, Colorado, the barbecue, the account withdrawal, the break-in. She didn't blink. You ready to make this stop, she asked. I didn't hesitate. Yes. So we planned, not with vengeance in our voices, but with focus. Cora knew a financial compliance specialist who helped me close every open tie joint, cards dormant, insurance links, emergency contacts. Even my phone plan. I cut every string they could pull. Then I sent one screenshot to the family group chat. It showed the closed account with a new title, Access Revoked. I didn't say a word, didn't explain, just dropped it and logged off. Abby responded with 3 question marks. Chris texted, "What is this?" My mom didn't message me directly. She called Kayla. Voicemail. Then came a new number. I let it ring. An hour later, a photo showed up on my feed. My parents, at a casino, drinks in hand. The same month they said they couldn't make rent and asked if I could cover their car insurance. They used my silence like currency, thinking if I didn't say no, it meant yes. So I posted the photo. Captioned it with one sentence. Funny how broke people still find Vegas. I didn't name them. I didn't have to. It spread fast. Cousins started asking questions. An aunt I hadn't heard from in years messaged saying, "If that's real, I'm sorry." Chris sent a long voice note. I didn't listen. I didn't need to. Then came the knock. Sunday morning. Kayla and I were cleaning out old boxes. She looked through the peephole and froze. It's your mom. And someone else. I opened the door just enough to see. My mom stood there, tight-lipped, looking like she hadn't slept. Next to her was Uncle Nate, her brother, the one who always thought every problem could be solved with a hug and a group prayer. Liam, my mom said, we need to talk. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. No way was I letting them in again. We canceled the vacation, she said. We thought maybe we could go somewhere smaller, just the core family. Start over, Nate added. Everyone deserves a second chance. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because I couldn't believe how far they'd bend logic to make themselves the victims. Start over, I asked. You broke into my home. My mom gave that look, the one that says she's tired of being misunderstood, as if I'm the unreasonable one. We didn't break anything. The door was unlocked. That's not how that works, I said. Nate stepped in. Liam, you're better than this. You were always the kind one. I was always the silent one, I corrected. Big difference. My mom's face hardened. "You've changed." I nodded. "That's the point." I didn't raise my voice, didn't argue, just made it clear. "If either of you shows up again, I'm filing a report." Nate looked stunned. "My mom, though." She just turned and walked away like the conversation was beneath her, like I had failed some invisible test. But I knew better now. I wasn't the one failing. I was just the one who stopped pretending. When I got back inside, Kayla looked at me like she was waiting for the other shoe to drop. "It's not over," I told her. "They're regrouping." And I was right. 2 days later, an email showed up in my inbox. From the school board. Subject line, notice of concern. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then I opened it. Someone had filed a formal complaint. Anonymous, said I was emotionally unstable, that I was bringing personal issues into the classroom, that my home conflict might be affecting the students. I nearly dropped my coffee. It was all vague enough to sound concerning. No specific incidents, just language designed to raise flags. I knew exactly who wrote it, and I knew why. I didn't even tell Kayla right away. I sat at my desk staring at the screen, trying to steady my breathing. This wasn't petty anymore. This was strategic. They wanted to ruin me quietly. So I made a call. Back to Cora. Told her everything. She didn't sound surprised. "They always escalate when they lose control," she said. "It's time to shut this down, for good." So we did. We started collecting. Messages, voicemails, screenshots. Proof of the attempted withdrawal. Photos from the casino. Old receipts that didn't match the stories they told. And we built a file. Not just for revenge, for protection. Because this wasn't a family feud. This was targeted sabotage. And I was done playing defense. Next step, exposure. The file was nearly 2 inches thick by the time we were done. Digital copies, paper records, voice memos, and annotated timelines. Cora called it receipts. I called it closure. But I knew it wouldn't feel like closure until it was out in the open. We didn't send it to my parents. We didn't send it to school either. We sent it to the extended family group chat. The one with everyone, cousins, aunts, distant relatives who still sent Facebook birthday wishes and thought my mom walked on water. At the top of the message, I wrote one line, "Before you judge me for stepping back, look at what I've been stepping around." Then came the documents. Screenshots of texts where my mom called Kayla a distraction and implied I had mental fog. The rejected $5,000 withdrawal attempt with the timestamp. Pictures from Vegas labeled the same week she said she was rationing groceries. Venmo requests from Abby labeled tuition that were actually down payments for music festival tickets. A copy of the anonymous school board complaint with the IP address traced back to a university library, Abby's college, and a signed letter from Cora verifying the financial fraud they'd pulled on her years before. It was more than proof. It was a pattern. It was history. Within minutes, the chat lit up. One cousin replied with just 3 dots. Another said, "I never knew it was like this." Then silence. The kind that doesn't ask questions because it already knows the answers. Abby went silent. Chris texted a separate message. "You didn't have to drag this into the open." But I did. Because keeping it quiet only ever helped them. The next morning, Kayla showed me a message on her phone. It was from my mom. She hadn't messaged me directly. She'd gone around again. Her words were short and bitter. "You poisoned him. He wasn't like this before you. I hope you're proud." I read it once. Just once. Kayla didn't flinch. She put her phone down and said, "She knows she lost." And she was right. Because when people lose control of the story, they attack the one holding the pen. I didn't respond. Not to my mom, not to Chris, not to the cousins who stayed neutral. I was done performing balance for people who'd never tried to hold it themselves. That week, I made a final decision. Not from anger, not from revenge. From necessity. I wasn't going to keep waiting for the next hit. I was going to end the game. Cora knew someone, a quiet, methodical lawyer named Ray, who specialized in family disputes and harassment protection. I met her on a rainy Thursday. She didn't ask for drama. She asked for dates, facts, patterns. I gave her everything. Every voicemail, every message. She listened carefully, like she'd heard it all before. Maybe she had. At the end of the meeting, she slid a form across the table and said, "Let's start with this. A formal no-contact order. Temporary now. Full filing to follow." Within a week, the paperwork was in motion. Not loud, not messy, just legal. Then came the apartment. My landlord, who'd been sympathetic since the break-in, replaced my locks, gave me a security camera upgrade, and added a clause to my lease about unauthorized entry. "I've seen bad family," he said. This is next level." The real surprise came a few days later. Ray's office traced the anonymous complaint to the school, more specifically to the IP address that submitted it. It came from a university Wi-Fi account. Abby's campus login. No VPN, no masking, just a sloppy mistake made with bold fingers. Ray called the school district. They reviewed the evidence, issued a formal closure, and deleted the complaint. They didn't even ask me for a statement. The weight lifted that day wasn't physical, but it might as well have been. I sat on my couch, coffee in hand, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. Then came the next step. Freedom. Real freedom. Kayla and I had talked about moving for a while, but there was always something in the way, school savings, my hesitation. Not anymore. We spent the weekend touring apartments. No pressure. Just a quiet curiosity about what could come next. We found one near the edge of the city. 2 bedrooms. Big windows. A view of the lake. Enough space for me to breathe and for Kayla to have the herb garden she kept dreaming about. We signed the lease on a Tuesday, moved in by the end of the month. Cora helped us pack. She didn't say much, just worked. But as I handed in the keys to my old place, she stopped me at the door and said, "That apartment was survival. This one's yours." It hit harder than I expected, maybe because no one had ever said it so plainly, that I deserved something that wasn't patched together out of guilt and obligation. After we moved, I deleted the family group chat. Not left it. Deleted it. Gone. I didn't need updates from people who watched it all unfold and said nothing. A few cousins messaged privately saying they hoped we could stay close. I didn't answer, not because I hated them, but because I was tired of being the one to carry both truth and grace. Work got easier. I stopped looking over my shoulder. My students made me a welcome back banner out of paper towels and colored markers. It said we missed Mr. L in glittery tape. I hung it up next to my desk. Kayla framed one of the drawings, a smiling stick figure with a massive beard labeled Best Teacher. I laughed so hard I cried. One night, a few weeks after everything had settled, we sat on our new balcony with cheap wine and a grocery store pizza. Kayla looked out at the dark water and said, "You know you're going to be a good dad one day." I blinked, not because I was afraid, because I hadn't thought that far ahead in years. I used to picture the future as a constant balancing act, managing people, calming storms, avoiding triggers. This was the first time I saw it as still. As mine. I looked at her and said, "If he turns out half as grounded as you, I'll take the credit anyway." She laughed, leaned into me, and we sat in the kind of silence that feels like healing, not absence. That was the night I knew the worst was over. The emails stopped. No more knocks. No more guilt bombs disguised as invitations. Just stillness. And in that stillness, something new took root. Peace not earned through forgiveness. Peace earned through boundaries, through choosing the quiet path even when they dared me to rage, and I never looked back. Peace has a strange way of making you realize how loud your life used to be. It wasn't the silence that hit me. It was the absence of walking on eggshells, the relief of no longer trying to decode every text from people who called themselves family. The new apartment felt different, not just in layout, but in energy. There were no memories stuck in the corners, no echoes of slammed doors or guilt-laced phone calls. Just morning light through the kitchen window, Kayla's laughter floating from the next room, and the quiet hum of a life we were finally building on our own terms. I thought that would be the end of it, that I had finally untangled myself from the roots that tried to grow around my throat. But people like my mother don't vanish. They simmer, wait, watch, and just when you start breathing freely again, they send a ripple. The first sign came from my Uncle Nate, a polite, vague text. Heard you moved. Hope all is well. It wasn't a threat. Not even a message from her, but I knew. It meant I was still being talked about, still being watched. I didn't reply. I refused to open a new door just because they learned how to knock. 2 days later, Kayla got a package. No return address. Just our names spelled correctly in handwriting I hadn't seen since childhood birthday cards. She opened it with hesitation. Inside were old family photos, loose prints from the 90s, ones I hadn't seen in years, vacations, birthdays, random backyard shots. In all of them, I was in the frame. But someone had gone through and scribbled notes on the backs. Nothing violent, just commentary. This was when he still cared. Before she took him away. We were happy here. It felt like a ghost trying to rewrite its own haunting. Kayla sat down and stared at the pile. I picked up one photo and flipped it over. On the back, written in delicate blue ink, was a single line, "You'll regret walking away when we're gone." It wasn't a plea. It wasn't even manipulative in the usual sense. It was something else entirely, a final attempt at narrative control. I didn't feel guilt. I felt invaded. That was the last straw. I called Ray. She filed a cease and desist within the hour, and we added the package to the record. The handwriting was consistent with old cards I had saved in a childhood memory box. I didn't want vengeance anymore. I wanted peace to mean peace. So we took one more step. Ray contacted a family court liaison and began the process of making the no-contact order permanent. She warned me it would take time, that the courts don't always move quickly with emotional abuse cases. But I didn't care how long it took as long as it got done. Around that time, Kayla got a call from her mom. Not unusual, but what caught my attention was the shift in tone. Kayla looked at me after hanging up and said, "Your mom called her." That stopped me cold. My mother had always treated Kayla like a temporary inconvenience, someone to tolerate but never truly acknowledge. Now she was reaching across families. Desperation has a scent, and it was starting to reek. I asked Kayla what was said. She hesitated. She told my mom I ruined your relationship with your family, that you were isolating yourself. She implied abuse. For a second, I couldn't move. I'd expected guilt trips, manipulation. But to paint me as abusive, to flip the story completely, that was something else. That was war. I didn't raise my voice, didn't even feel anger. What I felt was resolve. We're filing everything I told Ray the next morning. Every message, every voicemail, every story she's spreading. Ray didn't blink. Already ahead of you. That's what made her good. She understood that when people use love as leverage, the only way out is with facts that can't be spun. That same week, Cora came by with a box. "I've been cleaning," she said. "Found some old stuff you might want." Inside were more photos, but this time they were unaltered, unedited. Just memories as they were before all the expectations, before the guilt grew legs. She sat down at our kitchen table and poured herself tea, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You're not the first they've tried to shape," she said. "You're just the first who stayed standing when they pushed." I asked her once why she never fought back, why she let the story stay theirs for so long. She looked out the window and said, "Because I was tired. But you're building something different." And she was right. The difference wasn't just in what I had cut off, it was in what I'd chosen to build instead. A life that didn't demand constant repair, a love that didn't come with a ledger, a future that didn't require someone else's permission. But peace isn't loud. It doesn't make headlines or spark group chat debates. It's in the morning you wake up and forget to check your phone for drama. It's in the way Kayla sings when she's cooking. It's in the silence that doesn't carry weight anymore. Weeks passed, then a month, then another. No packages, no calls. The court date was approaching, but Ray was confident. The file was thick, the evidence undeniable. Then one afternoon, as I walked out of school, my principal flagged me down. I braced instinctively. Trauma doesn't leave your nervous system politely. But she smiled. "District wants to recognize your work this year. Parents nominated you for a teaching award." I didn't say anything at first, just nodded, then laughed, short, disbelieving. Because the very thing they tried to take from me, my job, my peace, My sense of purpose was now the thing I was being celebrated for. The irony didn't sting. It felt like balance. Real balance. That night, Kayla and I sat on the balcony again, this time with candles and a small cake she'd picked up just because. She handed me a card. Inside it said, "For choosing peace, for staying whole." I looked at her and realized I hadn't felt like a supporting character in someone else's story for months. I was finally the main one. Not perfect, not all-knowing, just real, just trying. And that was enough. She leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "You're doing it. You really are." I didn't need to ask what she meant. I just nodded because I was. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to look back and check if they noticed. I didn't care, because this wasn't about making them understand. It was about never needing their permission to live fully again. The court date came on a gray morning, the kind where the sky doesn't commit to rain, but still hangs heavy over everything. I wore my plainest shirt, no tie, no statement, just clean and solid. Kayla offered to come, so did Cora. But I told them both the same thing. I need to walk in alone. I need to feel that I can. They understood. Strength sometimes looks like solitude, and that day, I didn't want anyone shielding me from the past. The courtroom wasn't like the movies. No drama, no gasps, just cold air, distant typing, and a judge who looked like she'd seen 100 stories like mine. Maybe she had. I sat down with Ray beside me. Across from us, empty chairs. My family wasn't there. They'd been notified, had every chance to appear. But they didn't show. Not out of fear. Not even out of defiance. They just didn't care enough to fight in the open. That somehow felt more revealing than anything they could have said. Ray presented the documents. Chronological, color-coded, backed by screenshots and source data. The judge barely looked up until Ray handed over the final exhibit, a photo of the scribbled-on childhood prints, with the envelope they were mailed in, and the forensic handwriting comparison confirming it came from my mother. "So this is the kind of contact you're trying to prevent?" the judge asked, looking at me. I met her eyes. "It's not about mail. It's about never being allowed to stop defending myself. This is the first time I've had peace in years. I just want to keep it." She nodded. A small, almost imperceptible shift in her posture told me she understood. An hour later, the order was signed. Permanent. Enforceable. It didn't feel like triumph. It felt like silence finally having weight. I stepped out of the courthouse and into the cool air. My phone buzzed. Kayla's message. "You did it." I texted back a simple heart. Words felt too small. That night, we didn't celebrate with champagne or dinner out. We made soup, sat in our socks, watched a documentary about whales. Because real peace doesn't need fireworks. It needs quiet rooms and someone who makes you feel safe, even when nothing's said. Days passed. Then a week. The sky turned warmer. Students at school started talking about summer break, and I started feeling the beginnings of a life that wasn't shaped by fear. Then one afternoon, I got an email. From my aunt, my father's sister, the one who hadn't said a word during all of this. The subject line was just my name. The message was short. I saw the court filing. "I didn't know everything. I want to apologize, not just for what they did, but for not asking sooner. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." I stared at it for a long time. She wasn't part of the chaos, not directly. But like most people, she chose to stay quiet when it mattered most. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel moved. I just closed the tab and let it sit. Not everything needs a reply. Some acknowledgments are meant to float. The real healing wasn't in their apologies. It was in finally not needing one to feel whole. That weekend, I went through an old storage bin, one of the last boxes we hadn't unpacked since moving. Inside was a folder I hadn't meant to keep. Notes from the group chat, printed screenshots, my own scribbled lists of what happened when. I started reading, then stopped. It felt like holding someone else's grief, not mine, not anymore. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and dropped the entire folder into the shredder. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't symbolic. It was necessary. A few nights later, Kayla and I sat out on the balcony again. The moon was low and the trees below were humming with late spring. She turned to me, not suddenly, just casually, and said, "You feel different now." I asked her what she meant. She smiled that slow, warm kind that tells you the world hasn't broken everything sacred. You're not checking over your shoulder anymore. You're not bracing. It's like you exhaled. I hadn't noticed, but she was right. For the first time in years, my body didn't flinch at phone vibrations. My heart didn't race when I saw certain names in my inbox. The armor had loosened. Not gone, but no longer suffocating me. I reached for her hand. "You helped me get here." She shook her head. "No, I just reminded you what here looks like. And that was love, not saving me, not carrying me, just standing beside me while I remembered how to walk without a shadow." A week later, we got an invitation in the mail. Not from my family, from Kayla's cousin baby shower. We laughed about the paper color, debated whether the theme was too cutesy, and then bought a ridiculous duck-shaped gift set. At the party, surrounded by chatter and relatives I'd only met once or twice, I felt something strange. Not anxiety, not discomfort, just presence. No one knew about the court case. No one cared about the group chats or the family implosions. I wasn't the guy with baggage. I was just Kayla's partner, the teacher who made good dip and told decent jokes. And for the first time, that was enough. On the drive home, Kayla asked if I wanted kids someday. She didn't ask with pressure, just curiosity. I thought about it. Not like a plan, not like a checklist, just a vision. And it didn't scare me. I said if we raised them the opposite of how I was raised, then yes, absolutely yes. She didn't say anything at first. Then quietly, they'll never wonder if they're loved. I looked at her, neither will you. We drove the rest of the way with the windows down. The night air felt clean, like it didn't remember anything we'd been through, like maybe finally the story had shifted. Not erased, not rewritten, just changed tracks, and I was ready for what came next. The first time I realized I didn't think about them daily anymore, it happened on a Tuesday. I was walking back from the corner store, arms full of groceries, the wind soft, the sun already folding behind the buildings. And for the first time in what felt like forever, my thoughts weren't crowded. There was no mental checklist of things I'd need to prepare in case they called, no low buzz of anxiety, whispering that peace was borrowed time. It was just me, the sidewalk, and the sound of my keys in my pocket. That was the moment I knew. I hadn't just walked away from them, I had walked back into myself. Healing didn't come before me in grand gestures. It was in the way Kayla laughed when she found her old college playlist and played it on loop for 3 days straight. It was in the students who wrote notes like, "Thanks for not giving up on us, Mr. L." It was in the way I could finally look in the mirror and see someone I respected, not someone constantly negotiating his worth to people who never bothered to listen. We adopted a stray cat that started hanging around our building. He was grumpy, had one ear bent, and refused to respond to any name we gave him. So we just called him Neighbor. He didn't belong to anyone, but he stayed close. That felt familiar. That spring, Kayla and I started planting things. Not just herbs, real roots, a small lemon tree in a pot. Lavender along the windows. Something about watching green break through soil reminded me that growth doesn't rush and it doesn't ask permission. It just happens when the environment finally stops choking it. Every once in a while, I'd get updates from Ray. Quiet notices about the court filings, confirmations that everything remained enforced. There was nothing to worry about, no new noise. Just records, facts, a paper wall between the past and the present. I never replied to the few scattered messages my family tried to send through third parties. I didn't rage or block or rant, I just didn't engage. Letting go wasn't a one-time act. It was a practice. It was choosing again and again not to pick up what I'd already put down. In late June, school let out for summer. I cleaned out my classroom slowly, organizing supplies for next year. One of my students left a letter folded into a construction paper card. "I used to be scared to talk in class," it read, "but you made me feel like my voice mattered." I held on to that card. Not because I needed validation, but because it reminded me why I chose this path in the first place. To be a different voice than the one that raised me. To make space instead of swallowing it. Kayla and I finally took a real vacation. Just us. No cousin lurking with a camera. No guilt dragging along in our luggage. We rented a quiet cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Simple, clean, no itinerary. We hiked, we read, we napped on mismatched couches, and cooked meals that weren't fancy but tasted like home. One night watching the stars, Kayla turned to me and said, "I know you say it's over, but do you really feel free?" I thought about it. I didn't rush the answer. Freedom's not the end of something I said. It's what happens when nothing owns you anymore. Not even the need to be understood. She nodded. "You think they'll ever change?" I shook my head. "No, but that's not my job to hope for anymore." She rested her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I'm proud of you." I didn't reply, just held her hand tighter. When we got home, I printed out one photo from the trip, just the two of us on a trail, sweaty and smiling mid-laugh. I hung it by the door, first thing you see when you walk in, not because it was the most perfect photo, but because it was ours. Untouched, unedited, free. A few weeks later, Cora came over with a tray of lemon squares and her usual quiet wisdom. We sat on the balcony, watching neighbors stalk moths, and talked about everything and nothing. She looked at the photo by the door and smiled. "You know," she said, "they still think you'll come back one day." I didn't ask who. I didn't need to. "Maybe I will." I said, "when the sky turns green and time runs backwards." She laughed. A real laugh. The kind that makes you believe not all roots rot. Some just needed space to grow sideways. Before she left, she looked at me and said, "You're the ending I never had the courage to write." That stayed with me, because every story we live shapes someone else's someday. And maybe that was the quiet legacy I was building, not revenge, not retribution, but a map out for someone else lost in the same forest. On a late summer evening, Kayla asked if I'd ever consider writing it down. All of it. The story, the break, the rebuilding. "You don't have to share it," she said. "But maybe you should tell it, even if it's just to yourself." I didn't answer right away. I thought about the long nights, the shredded papers, the courtroom silence. I thought about the fear, the anger, the empty apartment with wine left on the table. And I thought about now. The cat, the plants, the balcony, the woman who loved me not for what I survived, but for who I'd become after. That night I opened my laptop. Not to write a takedown, not to create drama, just to document the truth. Because sometimes healing looks like remembering without flinching, and I wanted to remember every moment I chose myself, every door I closed, every sunrise I watched without dread. I don't know if I'll ever share it. Maybe one day, maybe never. But I know this: they stopped defining my story the moment I stopped defending it. The day I chose stillness over chaos, love over legacy, and peace above all else over being understood. So if you're out there, someone stuck between the guilt and the getaway, wondering if it's selfish to step away, wondering if you're the problem because you said enough, know this: you're not the problem. You're the boundary. You're the line they didn't expect you to draw. And you're allowed to be free. You're allowed to walk out and never turn back. I did. And for the first time in my life, I didn't just survive. I chose how the story ends. Story 2. My family was having a rooftop brunch when I opened Facebook on my 30th birthday. Behind them was a sign that said, "Happy birthday to our brightest light." My brother was the recipient. Mom said something. The favorite has always been him. After like the post, I left a remark. "Now is the time to make your wish." I undo the $7,800 transfer for his lodging at graduate school that evening. His landlord contacted him, yelling 4 days later, "You've got 3 days to leave." This time, I choose not to forgive them. Gifts weren't the point. That hasn't interested me since I was a teenager. I've never had high expectations. Only the text. A phone call, perhaps. Just a, "Hey, cheers to your birthday. I hope everything is going well for you." This year, however, they remembered. It got worse because of that. They recalled. They rejoiced. Not me, though. I was born on the same day as Jason. 5 years apart. It was always a miracle, according to our parents. We had the same birthday when we were children. Same room, same people, 2 cakes. I didn't mind at all. In a way, it was unique. However, the shared celebration ended about the time Jason turned 16. He should have his own thing, according to my mother. his own area. It's funny because I never received mine. I continued to call each year. Nevertheless, I texted first. If I had time, I would still choose something for him. He never followed suit. However, I assumed that was his nature. Every time I convinced myself it didn't matter, I let it go. However, there wasn't a slide this year. The timing wasn't horrible. It was intentional. As usual, I texted Jason on the morning of my 30th birthday to wish him a happy birthday. I hope it turns out well. 3 hours later, he gave a thumbs up in response. That was it. Nobody else contacted them. My mom didn't call. My dad didn't text me. Not a word from my uncle or aunt. Eli and Rachel. Around midday, my cousins sent me a brief happy birthday greeting, which was strange because they generally don't do that. Then I opened Facebook, and the first thing I saw was Rachel's live broadcast. I didn't assume they were on a city rooftop when I tapped it. Tablecloths in white, balloons made of gold, an absurd buffet for breakfast. There was everyone I grew up with. Both of my parents are cousins, my uncle and aunt, even the college pals of Jason. While I was seeing it, Amanda entered the room without saying anything. She simply stood beside me. Jason took center stage. Behind him, everyone was singing as he held a cake with 5 lighted candles. Against the skyline, a huge banner hung. "Happy birthday, our brightest light," it said. I remained still. I remained silent. They were all aware that it was my birthday. The same as 30 years ago. I saw it through to the end. I waited for my name to be called. A joke. Do I mention anything? Nothing. Then beneath the post, I noticed my mother's remark. His cheerful face has always been the most popular. As though it were endearing. As if they were all in on some private joke. It altered at that point. I was not depressed. I didn't become upset. I simply felt finished. The post was enjoyable. I then wrote a remark. Now is the time to make your wish. If it weren't for me, Jason wouldn't have paid the rent this month. He contacted me in a panic a few weeks prior, claiming that his stipend had not yet arrived. He had little money, wanted to keep our parents in the dark. I promised to cover him for a while. No issue. The amount was $7, $800. Housing at his graduate school wasn't inexpensive. Monday was the planned date of the relocation. I checked up the transaction on my laptop that evening and canceled it. Jason's landlord left me a voicemail 4 days later. He mistakenly phoned me while it was intended for him. He was yelling something about a contract violation and giving Jason 3 days to leave. I didn't answer the phone. Jason's mails also went unanswered by me. Not when he inquired about the situation. Not when he pleaded for assistance. Not even when he claimed to be going bankrupt. I told you so, but Amanda never said that. However, I saw it in her eyes. I didn't feel like the villain this time. I thought I was the only one listening. After that 4th text, Jason didn't text me again. No guilt-tripping, no irate voice notes, no calls. Nothing but quiet. Perhaps he believed that I had changed my mind. Or perhaps he finally understood that I wasn't playing a bluff. However, another person did get in touch. 3 days later, my mother phoned. I let the voicemail go. The birthday was not even mentioned by her. Just requested that I give them a call back when I got a moment. Said it had to do with family. I played the message aloud as Amanda and I were in the living room doing clothes. She remained silent until it was over, then turned to face me and told me not to, so I didn't. She persisted, however. She sent me a picture that evening of Jason standing on the curb with his laptop bag slung over one shoulder and everything he had in black garbage bags. At his feet are 2 duffel bags. He appeared to be waiting for a ride. Or a rescue, perhaps. One line was added by her. I hope all is well with you. I didn't answer. After that, Rachel called. Softly, she began to inquire about my well-being. I claimed to be all right. She stated she hadn't noticed until later that no one had even brought me up, and the birthday thing had been a little weird. Don't worry about it, I informed her. After a brief pause, she inquired as to whether I had actually canceled Jason's housing funds. Yes, I replied. She remarked, You know he's moving back home, right? After a little silence. That's when it finally clicked. Not only was he being evicted from his flat, I had left my dog in the home and he was returning there. After our daughter was born 2 years ago, I had to give up Leo. Amanda and I made an effort, but Leo needed room to run, and our apartment was too tiny. My parents volunteered to house him, claimed it will only last temporarily, until we discovered a larger location. It was horrible to take him back after he adapted, and they became connected. They would email me images. He still got aroused occasionally when he heard my voice on the loudspeaker. I simply sat there after hanging up with Rachel. Amanda questioned what I was wearing after noticing something on my face. I informed her that Jason would be living with my parents. She inquired about Leo. I took a while to respond. Leo disappeared 2 days later. I learned about a stunning purebred golden retriever via a Craigslist article. Excellent with families. 6 years old. Rehoming because of a change of lifestyle. Leo and my parents' property was featured in the pictures. The place beneath the oak tree is the same shade of red. He used to dig there. My dad sent me the listing via email. No warning, no call, no justification. Not only that, but they refused to let us take him back. Sold him as if he were a piece of furniture that took up room. It was Amanda who broke down in tears. All I did was look at the screen. I realized then that they intended to punish me. They intended to punish me for making Jason seem bad and for violating the unwritten family rule that he should not be touched. They probably thought I would apologize and plead for the dog to return. They were unable to comprehend. They relinquished the last bit of leverage they possessed. I'll take everything else now. I kept my knowledge of Leo a secret from them. I didn't show up. I didn't call, and I didn't email. I let them sit quietly and ask themselves whether I knew that was the part they detested the most. Not being aware of my knowledge or abilities. I didn't handle it as well as Amanda did. On the day we discovered the Craigslist posting, she shed a tear or two. She was composed and concentrated after that. She had probably been waiting for me to get out of the role of mediator that I had been locked in ever before Jason reached adolescence. We ceased discussing what had been stolen. We began discussing what remained. It was an easy choice for Jason's internship, a River North boutique public relations business. He made care to include the name in every interaction he had, even if it wasn't extremely well known. In order to get him in, my dad pulled strings. Most likely owing a favor to someone. The day Jason received it, he called me. As if we were still in close proximity, said that it was a step toward the door. If he could win over the partners, he may even land a long-term position. Before doing anything that would allow him to settle in, I waited a week. I then began to dig. I created a burner Gmail, removed several screenshots, information, and assembled a little bundle. It wasn't profound at all, only his own words. He made a joke about utilizing ChatGPT to write his undergraduate thesis in a tale he published a year ago. A video showed him making fun of the firm's clientele while intoxicated. He once boasted in a text message to a mutual acquaintance about using fictitious consultancy jobs to bolster his credentials. It didn't have to be NPR, but it wasn't a smoking gun. It all comes down to perception. I used an anonymous email address, just enough breadcrumbs to make you question yourself. A nuclear fallout was not what I anticipated, only a constant leak. I waited 3 days. Jason shared an Instagram story with the phrases on the 4th, but it was just a dark screen. When you turn around, some individuals will sneer in your face and make you feel bad. After that, no more workplace photos, no more posts about his coffee shots at his desk or the early morning grind. After a week, Amanda discovered that he had discreetly deleted the internship from his LinkedIn profile. That meant something to me. No one at the top wanted the optics or the headache. I remained silent, though. When they began to think that it was me but were unable to provide proof, I wanted to see what they would do. Already, they were on the defensive. As if sensing a vulnerability, Jason stopped sharing pictures of himself with Leo. My mother disabled her Facebook account. My dad completely quitted texting. Then Amanda's mother texted her. At a church event, her mother had met mine. Not much. It's just another one of those neighborhood breakfasts when everyone is pasteling and gossiping. My parents had gone about informing others that I wasn't properly spoken according to Amanda's mother. I had been having emotional difficulties because Amanda was showing such strength in a trying time. I didn't feel angry. Clarity was the key. They were establishing the story and attempting to interrupt my pity before I could say anything. They would scream, "See, he's unraveling," if I retaliated. They would accuse me of slipping inward if I said nothing. They sought to portray this as my problem rather than theirs. The letter then arrived. White envelope certified mail. No name to return. I only have the address of the family lawyer who worked on my grandfather's case. It had been during my adolescent years that I had heard from him. There was a single page with my entire name typed on it. At the top is another. It was the stark realities, not legalese. They were taking me off of their estate's beneficiary list with immediate effect. The home in particular. Jason would get everything. No call, no note, a simple erase. After reading the letter twice, Amanda put it aside. She seemed to be waiting for me to take it all in. I had. I stated that this was not about teaching me a lesson. It had to do with keeping me out. She gave a nod. What can we learn from them next then? I was well aware that I would no longer dispute. I refrained from shouting. I was going to force them to see its internal disintegration. Around this time, I became aware that Jason was still not understanding what was going on. Some of it had been put together by my parents. My mom's post slowed slowly, and I could tell. I was no longer tagged in anything by her, even the old recollections of their birthdays that used to resurface every year. However, Jason continued to believe that this was a phase. Consequences usually came slowly to him. He would make a mistake. Life would continue when someone fixed it. Nothing was being fixed this time, and he was beginning to twitch. I waited until he shared a picture from his recently launched side project. His caption said that he was selling screen-printed sweatshirts with corny inspirational sayings on them from behind a folding booth at a weekend market. Now he was attempting to reinvent himself as a maker. I took a screen grab of the article. I then went to the IRS tip line and formally complained. I provided the post 3 links to his tagged posts where he boasted about hitting figures this month, and his Venmo handle, which he hadn't considered changing from his entire name. If they started a file on him, it made no difference if it was $500 or $5,000. His next financial assistance application would be ruined by that alone. I didn't check for changes after sending it. The point wasn't that. Erosion was the main point, as they had corroded me, individually, although she refrained from participating in the methods Amanda backed each one. She was aware of how long I would keep this. The only one who ever truly saw it was her. Then an odd thing occurred. Have we passed? Then there was silence again. No drama on Facebook, no sarcastic texts, not even a hazy narrative. Perhaps they were regrouping, I thought, or perhaps they were afraid. Amanda then summoned me into the kitchen one morning. She had her phone in her hand and was looking through her texts. I sensed something approaching, but her demeanor remained the same. "You should read this," she said. "My cousin Rachel sent me an SMS. She said she shouldn't have told me, but she felt I should be aware. Instead of rehoming Leo, my parents intended to sell him again. He had been returned by the family that had adopted him a month prior. It seems that he had separation anxiety and barked excessively. With a higher price and an offer to transport him, my mom put up another Craigslist ad. On the phone, Rachel heard her talking about Leo as if he were a used blender that she was attempting to empty. It was the choice, not the dog, that made me sit down. They were aware that Leo was more important to me than all of this. They had the option to contact and inquire whether we wanted him back now that he was back. Since injuring me meant power to them, they chose to list him once again. "We're not letting that happen," Amanda responded, glancing at me. That evening, we made the call. To someone else, not to them. One of Amanda's undergraduate pals was employed at a rescue. We handed her the listing, explained the circumstances, and gave her my parents' address. It wasn't difficult. We had every document, receipts, pictures, texts, adoption information, everything. The advertisement was taken off 3 days later. After confirming that someone had arrived, Rachel and Leo departed. He was secure. No, not theirs, but not mine. And I felt almost at peace for the first time since this entire thing began. It was short-lived, though. Jason arrived at Amanda's office the same week. Not hers. Like a customer, he waited in the lobby, carried a folder under his arm and a bunch of flowers. "Give this to Michael," he added. handing the folder to Amanda as she emerged. Then he went away. Screenshots were printed within. Every text message and comment I sent him over the past 2 years has been marked and highlighted. A handwritten note at the bottom of the folder was an attempt to construct a case. I'm aware of what you are doing, and it is now over. When she arrived home, Amanda handed it to me and said, "So what's next?" Since it wouldn't be about Jason, I didn't respond immediately away. It would be about them. Families like mine don't think they're doing anything wrong until the effects start to manifest in areas that are important to them. Control of one's reputation, property. Jason didn't frighten me with his little folder trick. It was amateur time. Someone who believed that paper and flowers would frighten a man he had ridiculed behind his back for years was making a desperate mistake. However, I learned something significant from it. He was attempting to bluff now that he was out of rope. A few days later, the unexpected portion arrived. Ellie. Our daughter entered the room with a little white package as Amanda and I were having supper. No address for return. The postal hole has been used to sneak it through. There was a picture inside. Jason is holding Leo in his lap while seated in my dad's leather chair. It was the exact chair I sat on during my visit. They never allow anyone else to use it. Blue ink and a letter were scribbled on the back. There are certain things you can't keep. You were never supposed to have some things. They're playing with fire now, Amanda murmured, glancing at me. Something didn't add up, so I didn't reply. Leo was picked up by a rescue contact, according to Rachel. On the day he left, the advertisement was released. However, he had returned. I gave Rachel a call right away. She didn't respond. After that, I contacted Amanda's buddy to come to her aid. No one on her crew had picked up a puppy that week, she added, claimed that someone else could have received the tip. However, there were no transfers, no records, nothing. That's when I discovered my folks had set everything up. He was never sold. He was never abandoned by them. We were led to believe that they did. I'll twist it over. Allow Amanda to experience grief once more, just to motivate us to move, just to make me do anything, and when I didn't. They presented the last picture as if it were a checkmate when I remained silent. However, it wasn't. They were unaware of what I had started weeks before. I took a copy of the original document from an old email after they deleted me from the will. Years ago, when he still had faith in me, my dad had sent it. Both signatures were witnessed and dated on a scanned PDF. The house had issues, and Jason and I were listed as co-beneficiaries. When my dad converted the basement into a rental apartment 4 years ago, he boasted about never obtaining permits. I recall that talk. He claimed to have saved a lot in inspection costs as a result. I still had the SMS he sent that day, boasting about his cunning. Thus, I anonymously complained as a neighbor. Safety issues, zoning infractions, and appropriate construction. I've included pictures of exposed wiring and walls that were being torn out and rebuilt that I took back when I was still assisting them with renovations. The city waited 3 weeks to reply, but they did so quickly. A pending inspection sign was placed on the house's front door. Fines for identified violations are mounting. Someone uploaded a picture of Jason fighting with a man wearing a reflective vest on the front yard with Jason in the background. I didn't chuckle. I simply waited. Then our door was knocked on. Eli, my cousin, was there. He didn't appear to have slept. "You need to know something," he remarked as he entered without asking and took a seat at our table. "Your parents are pressing so strongly for a purpose. Jason isn't the only one. Leo isn't the only one. It has to do with what is under the basement." Amanda gave me a glance. I turned to face Eli. He went on. "Down there, your dad has been keeping paperwork. Financials, files, and other things he was meant to disclose years ago. I believe they are concerned. The city will find out if they begin to dig." "What type of material?" I asked. He hesitated. "Accounts abroad." And in your name, Amanda got to her feet. Since it was no longer about retaliation, I remained silent. It was survival now. It had always felt strange in the basement. It consisted of a water heater that made an odd buzzing sound and incomplete drywall boxes when I was younger. My dad never allowed anyone, including me, to go down there after converting it into a rental suite. Additionally, I assisted in bringing the insulation inside. When Amanda and I were switching flats, I once asked if I could use the space. He gave no explanation for his refusal. I now knew why. Amanda and I sat in the dark for a while after Eli went. She also kept questioning what your name meant. Though I had a theory, I didn't have a good response. My dad helped me set up an LLC when I believed I wanted to start a freelancing company, and co-signed a few documents for me alone when I was in college, including an account for a summer internship. I didn't read the tiny print since I was a foolish 20-something. That was more than 10 years ago. I assumed that everything had been resolved, but what if it wasn't? What if he had continued to use my name? We were unable to contact the city. Not quite yet, if something bearing my name was discovered in the basement by inspectors. I phoned a lawyer friend of Amanda's since I was unsure of which way the blame would go. A quiet man, low profile, deals with financial issues and whistleblowers. I kept names to myself, only presented it as a hypothetical. He did not recoil, stated that I needed to move quickly to get ahead of any paperwork that would link me to undeclared assets. He provided me with a phone number, promised to guide me through a process of voluntary disclosure. Amanda seemed frightened. We needed proof first, but I was numb. I gave Rachel another call. She picked up this time. I asked her directly, "Regarding Leo, did she lie?" Silence fell. She went on to say that I must. "Your mother promised to make sure I never smelled anything if I informed you he was still there." I apologize. I remained silent. She added something else. "Do something now if you're going to do it. Tonight they are removing items from the basement." I hung up and got to my feet. Already, Amanda was reaching for the keys. We took the wheel. It had been nearly 2 years since I had visited the residence. A vehicle was moving in the back, but the front lights were out. I parked down the street and approached by myself when I failed to notice 2 men carrying boxes covered in garbage bags. Amanda remained in the vehicle with the engine running. I knocked firmly once. The door was opened by my father. His expression fell. Without asking, I went inside. Went directly to the entrance of the basement. It had been unlocked. There were dust boxes everywhere, and the area smelled like damp concrete. Cabinets for filing were pressed up against the wall. Half a drawer is open and empty. The remainder is being loaded. I said nothing at all. I took pictures with my phone. Each envelope and package label has a date on it. My name was on a few of them. Some had Jason's. One included a logo that I knew from an old offshore bank that I foolishly utilized for a college freelancing work. "You have no idea what you're doing, according to my dad." "Yes, I do," I replied. After that, I departed. I sent everything to the lawyer by morning. I could identify every picture and document. 3 hours later, he gave another call. "This is more than avoidance, Michael. This is illegal." I was asked whether I wanted to formally collaborate. "Yes," I replied. He added that if I turn everything over before it blows up, the government could provide immunity. 2 weeks have passed since then. My dad was served yesterday. Next week, Amanda and I will meet with investigators. Jason hasn't spoken at all. My mom only uses cryptic Bible verses when things are burning, and she shared one on Facebook. Leo has returned with the rescue, and they have stated that they would retain him for us until we relocate to a place with a yard. When things come full circle, it's funny. In my life, for the first time, I'm not glancing behind me. The update is them. Jason didn't apologize when he eventually phoned this morning. Not to inquire, for the sake of words only. "You succeeded." I didn't answer. After a brief pause, he said, "They're losing everything. I assume you are aware of it." I remained silent, though. He ended the call. Amanda sent me an item from a local paper 10 minutes later. The business section has a little component. A family is being probed for a multi-year offshore tax fraud scam. There were enough details, but no names for anyone who knew us to figure it out. This afternoon, my dad's business partner resigned. My mom no longer uses Facebook. 2 weeks from now, Leo will come. Is there a yard or not? He is returning home. Jason as well. His LinkedIn profile was just updated. Freelance brand strategist is now shown. Story 3. Although my statement stated a $400 venue payment plus food, I was not invited to the family wedding. According to my aunt, you were included in the thank you card. I didn't respond, simply canceled the card, challenged each transaction, and marked the planning as illegal. At the reception, they were turned away. "We need to talk," they said in their last email. I simply clicked on archive. I consider myself to be connected to my family, and my name is David. We weren't tight on a daily basis, but we did show up for holidays, birthdays, and the occasional group text argument. I thus assumed I would be involved when my cousin Stephanie got engaged. All I wanted was a seat at the reception, not a groom's slot or anything. Hurry up! I learned about the nuptials. Instagram is how individuals learn that their ex moved. There, they were happy family members, Stephanie, in her beautiful lace dress, carrying a bouquet like a catalog model. While eating leftover Thai food and gazing at a tagged photo, my family and I were 200 kilometers away. I initially persuaded myself it was an error. Perhaps the invitation was sent to the incorrect address. Perhaps I simply lost myself in the shuffle. However, everything became evident the further I scrolled. Everyone was present. At least one arrived by plane from Arizona. Andrew, my younger brother, was there, wearing a fitted suit I had never seen before, and he was smiling like a fool. In some group shots, even my dad, who has trouble watching a movie, looked cheesy. I gave my mother a call. She sounded anxious, said something ambiguous about how I would understand once I learned the whole tale and that the guest list was limited. I would, but I didn't at the time. I received a call from Lisa, the mother of my Aunt Stephanie, 2 weeks before to the wedding. She spoke quickly because she was nervous, requesting my assistance with some pre-wedding planning. She was actually asking if you could float us by yourself. I ought to have ended the call. I let her speak instead. They required assistance with the venue deposit. The caterer insisted on upfront payment. Without confirmation, the planner would not finish the timetable. All of this was just temporary, and once the presents arrived, I would receive full reimbursement. I agreed foolishly. I believed I may receive an invitation if I helped, not because I wanted to be giving, as though I needed to purchase my way back into the family. I thus paid the fees, $1,500 for food and $2,000 for the venue deposit. The planner will get an additional $700. I put them all on my card. I kept it a secret, not even my pals. I simply awaited the envelope's arrival. It didn't. I texted Stephanie 3 days before to the wedding. Just a friendly hello, wondering if I missed something. She didn't respond. Rather, Aunt Lisa forwarded a note to me. I apologize. Despite the venue's restricted capacity, you will be included in the thank you notes. That was it. I spent 5 minutes looking at that message. After that, I went online, retrieved the transactions, and began clicking. Conflict, conflict, conflict. Cancel your card, change the account. Flag, supplier. The planner contacted me 2 days later. It seems that she was unable to confirm payment. On the day of the wedding, the venue refused to let the party in since the card was marked as unapproved without such confirmation. Stephanie sent me an email that evening. No salutations. Don't apologize, only 5 words. We must speak. I selected archive. On a Saturday, the wedding took place. By Sunday afternoon, it appeared as though I had waged war on my voicemail and inbox. Lisa arrived first. Naturally. In 2 hours, 6 calls were missed. Then my cousin Andrew, who obviously had no understanding what was happening but wanted to be engaged enough to feel significant, sent me a barrage of SMS. What did you do? Was his first message. Did you cancel the card for the following one? After that, they were unable to enter the reception. You claimed there would be no money. Was that you? I didn't respond. No one, not even him. From my room, I watched things develop as if it were a Netflix miniseries. I was aware beforehand. Then came the conclusion of Lisa's email. In some way, it was both regretful and angry at the same time, despite being lengthy and hectic. She accused me of financial sabotage and said that I had taken the family by surprise. What she said. She also said that on the most significant day of Stephanie's life, I had made her feel ashamed. That one nearly made me giggle, as though I had just come into the arena and turned down the speakers. I just reclaimed what was rightfully mine. A gift card was not signed by me. I made invoice payments. There is a distinction. Someone posing as a lawyer sent me an email on Monday morning. Not the actual one. Just a buddy of a relative who felt he could write a formal-looking letter after taking a semester of pre-law. It included contract violations, damages, and legal remedies. Everything. I sent it to Rachel, a friend of mine who is a lawyer. Together, we attended college. She phoned me laughing after reading it. "They don't have a case." "I said," she said. "They requested assistance rather than a contract." "David, you're not their ATM." Nevertheless, I was aware that things would worsen before they improved. The wedding pictures began to vanish from social media by Tuesday. Stephanie's post came first, followed by her photographer's tag. After then, a large group of people untagged themselves from the photos taken at reception. Evidently, those attempting to remove traces of a disastrous evening move as quickly as the internet. It wasn't until one of my old high school friends, who was invited to the wedding due to some complicated common family tie, that I realized what had actually transpired. DM me on Instagram. "Hey, I heard you called off the wedding, bro," he said in his message. "It was crazy. Halfway through security arrived. Turn the device off." If there was footage, I inquired. I got a TikTok from him. Someone had captured some of the mayhem on their phone, either a server or another visitor. Although grainy, the video was enough clear. It depicted visitors being requested to go. Employees appeared to be under stress. Stephanie was surprised as she stood close to the bar. Lisa and the planner are at odds. Dramatic subtitles were added along with a message about being wealthy and forgetting to pay for the venue. By the end of the day, it had received over 40,000 views. To be sure I was viewing it correctly, I watched it again, and then 3 times. My dad left me another voicemail after that. I believe he told me that I had made my point and that it was time to act like the grown-up. It seems that the individual who provides the funds is supposed to keep quiet while the rest of the family arranges the celebration. After hearing his message again, I erased it and didn't bother to reply. Lisa eventually got through later that evening. She attempted to contact from a new number after I banned her primary one. I responded only to hear her response. She did not engage in polite conversation. "You've made us feel ashamed," she remarked. "We included you in the card of gratitude. You were not even interested in arriving." Of course, I informed her that $400, $200 cannot be covered by a thank you card. I informed her that I wouldn't have paid a dime if they had just been truthful, and informed me right away that they didn't want me there but still wanted my money. "I was making this personal," she said. "It's personal," I told her. I told her something else after that. I wanted my money back, everything. They could speak with my lawyer if they didn't want to deal with me. That didn't sit well with her. I made another choice that week. Not all I wanted was my money back. I intended to ensure that they experienced the pain of this for a considerable amount of time. They believed that the worst possible outcome was humiliation, so yet they had not seen anything. Rachel promised to get me a lawyer, but I didn't do so immediately. Instead, I went through old emails, bank statements, and texts. I wanted all the proof that connected me to those payments. Every text message and receipt that Lisa sent that had phrases like reimbursement and "we'll pay you back." By Thursday, I had everything. I CC'd Stephanie, Andrew, and Lisa in a single email. It was easy. Copies of the 4,000 Tiandan charges broken down by vendor were attached. They had 7 days to give the money back. Just numbers and dates, no threats. Lisa didn't respond. Stephanie did. She was nearly insulting in her message. She said that the family was emotionally spent and that discussing money matters at this time was inappropriate. As though I had requested a favor. She was still licking her wounds from her disastrous reception, as if this was something to be ignored. The problem with folks like Stephanie is that they believe immunity comes from family, that someone else will clean things up regardless of what they do. I was that person once. No more. I waited rather than ran after them. Give the 7 days to pass. I then sent the identical email once again. This time, the venue, the caterer, and the planner are all involved. I didn't have anything to say. I just informed them that I was no longer connected to the disputed payments and that they were legitimate. I once brought up fraud. That was sufficient. The planner was one of their responses. Lisa had apparently attempted to hire the same planner again for a late summer redo celebration. However, following my communication, the planner withdrew and barred Lisa from any more reservations. And it was only the start. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in months began to contact me. Uncle Ben contacted me and inquired about the true circumstances. I forwarded the identical breakdown to him. He provided me screenshots of Lisa and Stephanie in a group conversation 2 days later. As it turned out, they had been telling the rest of the family a different version of the tale. I had reversed the charges by hacking Lisa's automobile. They said I was envious and purposefully ruined the wedding. It was a full-scale campaign of smears. I thus took an action that I had not intended to do. The receipts were posted by me. It was a private communication addressed to a few chosen family members, not in a public setting. Emotional, courteous, and clean. I demonstrated the sentences, the sums, and the ensuing quiet to them. I then asked a last inquiry. Would you remain silent if you were in this situation? After the message, there was a strange stillness. Heavy. Those who did respond weren't upset, but not everyone did. They were ashamed that they had failed to notice, intervene, and stop Stephanie and Lisa from running amok for so long. Then an unforeseen event occurred. My flat was visited by Andrew. It had been months since I'd seen him in person. He didn't make the initial call, simply waited while the buzzer was ringing. I opened the door for him, primarily out of interest. He made no attempt to defend them. He seemed worn out. Said that it wasn't until the evening before the wedding that he discovered they had arrived from the invite list. It was too late by that point. He expressed regret, but not only to himself. He then said something that made me stop dead in my tracks. David, you won't get your money back. The presents have already been used. The honeymoon is expensive. It's all gone. What did he mean by everything I asked? He said that without notifying anybody, Lisa had sold one of Grandma's antique rings. After my wages were withheld, I used it to pay the additional catering expense. My mother had been promised that ring, filtered through her body. I was completely unaware that it was gone. I have to recuperate from something else now, and money was no longer the only factor. Andrew informed me about the ring just before midnight. He dropped it, and for a minute, we sat in quiet as if the words had just smashed the room. Grandma's ring of emerald. Lost. Sold to pay for the wedding, the exact ring that my mother had been promised for years. Fell apart after the reception, the one that, although officially still Lisa's, she wore on special occasions. The only thing in the family, with a genuinely verifiable line of inheritance, was that. For a long, I kept quiet, not because I was surprised, but rather because I wasn't. It complemented everything else flawlessly. Andrew seemed ashamed. Claimed that he just learned about it after listening in on Lisa and Marjorie's phone conversation at a Charleston diamond store about negotiating a better deal. Lisa didn't seem to care that she didn't receive nearly what it was worth. She was frantic to close the gap in her finances caused by my reverse payments. I inquired whether his mother was aware. No, he responded. Lisa was attempting to portray it as recycling some trash or other unneeded family property. I genuinely chuckled for a moment at the foolishness of referring to something as an heirloom and using it only to clear up a self-made mess. I didn't phone the store the next morning as David or as someone attempting to retrieve stolen goods, just an interested buyer. I gave the best description I could of the ring. Vintage platinum emerald band. Jam 1956 was written on a little inscription on the inside. When I brought up the engraving, the woman on the phone hesitated. Was it possible that Mrs. Lisa Martin sold us this piece? I simply thanked her for the information and hung up without responding. That was sufficient. Without a doubt, Lisa had sold the ring. I didn't immediately go to my mother. I visited Rachel. Rachel was more than prepared. She composed a formal letter that made all the necessary points. Deception. Ownership is disputed. Possible civil culpability. She held on to it. Simply enough to frighten them without going too far in the direction of legal animosity. We confiscated Lisa and sent it to the retailer. I didn't expect her to answer. There was no resistance from the jeweler. The sale was verified by them. Informed me that the buyer was a Georgia-based private customer. Said they couldn't guarantee anything, but they would transmit our letter. Privacy, confidentiality, etc. I assumed that would be the end of it. Then I received a call 2 days later. The buyer's assistant said that the letter had been viewed by her boss, a retired oncologist, agreed to return the ring for the full amount he paid, plus a $500 convenience charge since he didn't want any legal smoke. I made the payment immediately, without hesitation. Cleaning up their mess has already cost me hundreds of dollars. What else needed to be fixed? Something that mattered, really. By insured courier, the ring came. I greeted the delivery man at the door 3 days later. Compared to my memory, the box was smaller. The edges of the velvet were slightly torn, as if it had been touched by just enough hands to serve as a reminder to me of how quickly valuable items might go. It was there when I opened it. Same feeling in my belly, same little writing, same deep green stone. When I was a child, Grandma used to let me hold it and warn me not to breathe on it. I snapped a photo and forwarded it to my mother. In less than 2 minutes, she phoned me. "No, hi there. No idle chatter. It was returned to you." "Yes," I told her. She didn't weep. I said, "Bring it home," without venting. It dawned on me then just how furious she was. You knew something significant had broken inside of her when she stopped talking. I shared a picture of the ring on the family Facebook group that night. The packaging contains only the ring. The frame contains nothing else. I only included one phrase in my caption: "Never did you own this." In a matter of minutes, comments began to flood in, primarily from relatives who had previously dared not speak. A few were perplexed. Others offered tacit support. Then there was Lisa. She remained silent. I received a private message from her. "Enough is enough. Your point has been made." That one stayed with me, because she still believed that I was making a scene I knew at that moment. As if this had all been a tantrum, an embarrassing campaign. She was still confused. This was no longer retaliation. This was recuperation. Something that wasn't theirs was taken. They were dishonest, manipulated, trying to remove me from their carefully manicured wedding narrative after using me for financial gain. I had the ring now. The receipts were with me. They were surprised by something else I had. Everyone's focus. I wasn't finished yet either. I had no idea the Facebook post would cause such a stir. To be honest, I assumed it would be lost among pictures of someone's new grandchild or a post wishing Uncle Todd a happy birthday. Instead, like a creeping leak in a boat that no one knew was sinking, it went off in silence. Half of my mom's side had messaged me by the next morning. Some were shocked, some angry, but not at me. It seems that Lisa's account of the ring was somewhat different. She said that no one wanted it and that it had been in a drawer for years. She was also doing the sensible thing by selling off her used goods, considering that there are actual pictures of my grandmother wearing it at my parents' wedding. She even made an effort to make it appear as though it was her mother's ring rather than my and Mom's. Something was broken open by the post. All of the private complaints that individuals had been keeping to themselves suddenly began to surface. Julie, my cousin, messaged me to let me know that Lisa borrowed $800 from her last year and never returned it. After their mother passed away, Uncle Rick reported Lisa had redistributed a set of antique china, saying she was protecting it. It was no longer about a ring. Years of covert thievery under the pretense of family favors were at issue. At last, Lisa broke down. She unexpectedly arrived at my mom's place 3 days later. My mother contacted me later and summarized it as if it were a police interrogation, even though I wasn't present. Lisa sobbed. "I was turning the family against her," she said. She expressed her embarrassment, saying she didn't believe I would get this far, said that I gave her a thieving appearance. Mom didn't stand up for me. She was not required to. She recently informed Lisa that there are no requirements for trust. People you continuously take advantage of cannot be expected to be loyal. Then Lisa delivered the words that finally made sense. "The amount of strain I've been under is unknown to you." That was it. That was the entire rationale. Pressure as though entitlement and poverty were synonymous. As if she had permission to raid the family tree for extra components since she couldn't organize a wedding without using up all of her relatives. I sent one last message the next day. To Stephanie, not Lisa. I informed her that I had found the ring and that I had all of the receipts, screenshots, and documentation of the money I had fronted. I threatened to take legal action against her if the loan wasn't paid up in 14 days. The following morning, she responded with 5 words. "Really, you wouldn't do that?" I didn't respond. Rather than hoping for a great court victory, I phoned Rachel and informed her to prepare the papers because it was time to quit playing the role of family peacekeeper. The instant they canceled my chair and took away my assistance, they turned me into an outcast. A week went by. Until the product came, there was no payment, no apologies, and no reply. No address for return. There was a check in Lisa's handwriting for precisely $4,200. No explanation, no remark. Silence and the check. It was done. It ought to have been anyhow. The wedding photographer, however, messaged me out of the blue. "Hey, I just saw all the drama on the internet." Strange query. "Do you want the unprocessed files?" I took a long time to respond. Only gazed at the text. He was giving something that no one else had, which is what he meant by that. The unaltered reality. I nearly disregarded the message from the photographer. Even the mention of the wedding felt like old news to me at that time, since I had moved on from it. But his message seemed strangely straightforward. He claimed to have seen everything on the internet, including the ring, the family problems, and the reverse payments, and he felt I may be interested in the unprocessed picture files. I initially assumed he was referring to a few images. Then he gave a Dropbox link with about 300 photos taken directly from the memory cards without any editing. No captions, no watermarks, only one day, frame by frame, just like it was. Before I opened it, I sat there for a long time. After that, I opened my laptop, poured myself a drink, and began looking through them. The dress was hanging on a window frame the bridesmaids were trying too hard to be natural. And the first pictures included simple makeup chairs. Nothing offensive. The usual pre-wedding nonsense. However, the vibe was completely off. Stephanie didn't appear content. Not anxious either. Just irritated, weary, as if she had already moved on. Then I discovered the first strange one. A picture shows Lisa pointing at a clipboard while standing next to the planner. The planner's expression spoke it all. She had no smile on her face. It was 11:47 a.m. according to the timestamp, only a few hours before to the event. I turned to the following one. Lisa on the phone. The next one. Stephanie is sitting by herself on a bench, half-dressed and browsing through her phone. No bridesmaids to be seen. I clicked farther and further into the folder. The more visible the fissures became. Outside family members are fighting, while throughout the ceremony, a guest is looking at their watch. I believe a cousin discreetly gave Lisa an envelope that was obviously filled with cash. The reception that was intended to take place followed. The pictures quickly went from awkward to wild. Only half of the room was occupied. Some of the attendees stood around looking perplexed without even sitting down. The DJ seems disoriented. Stephanie paced. In the majority of the photos, Lisa was facing away from the camera, speaking to staff members in a rigid, frozen pose, as if she were attempting to keep things together by willpower. And then the instant when everything broke. Two venue employees are seen conversing with the planner in one picture taken from the other side of the ballroom, and in another, they are seen approaching the microphone. Place yourself near to the frame. After the DJ unplugged his laptop, Lisa stood in the middle of the frame, her mouth hanging wide in the middle of his speech. Stephanie was off to the side, her mascara flowing, and her veil twisted, and hands were lifted. The last 50 pictures showed only people leaving empty chairs and unfinished meals. There were no smiles. As security stood 5 feet away, Lisa continued to argue with the planner. Crossed arms. I just sat there for a bit after closing the folder. It didn't feel good. It wasn't even depressing. Simply put, it was hollow. It's similar to witnessing a slow-motion video of a vehicle collision that you knew was coming but hoped would stop before it struck a wall. I kept the pictures to myself. I didn't mail them out or post them. I didn't have to. Everyone in the family had already drawn their lines after hearing the narrative. Quietly, some individuals took my side. Others continued to support Lisa. No one excused what she did, but it was mostly habitual. I received one final mail a few weeks later, written by hand. No address for return. There was a brief message and a $4,200 check inside. Don't apologize. No justification. This alone brings us even. Stop, please. The check was deposited by me. It was mine, not because it made things better. After a week of keeping the notes on my desk, I eventually tore them up. Lisa didn't get in touch again. Stephanie didn't either. Andrew made 1 or 2 attempts and texted a few times, being careful, yet courteous, as if he wasn't sure whether the door was still open. I didn't open it, but I also didn't sign it. "Where's the ring now, Mom?" out of quiet principle, not for display. She wears it to church, to coffee with friends, and to family gatherings. It reminds me just what it took to retrieve it each time I see it on her hand. And first, all I had to lose. Bridges weren't burned by me. They kept blowing up the ones I was repairing, so I simply quit. And it felt like enough for the first time in a long time.